And I want to start out the day just by thanking all of our leadership. I'm truly grateful for the amazing leadership we have here with Vital Health Global. We have um, a very mature level of leadership. And I feel like you're all here because of that same reason, because a great leader brought you in and showed you something different and a different way we can do this business. And it's been I've said it so many times, but the best phrase that comes to my mind is a breath of fresh air, being able to work with such amazing people. And the topic I have today is all about environment, and it's only possible because of the great leadership that we have. Um, no matter how much a corporate wants to have good leadership, if the field, um, I guess let me say it a different way. When the field has great leadership, that makes all the difference. It makes it possible. It makes it flow. And the environment is crucial to a strong business, to a strong company, to long-term growth. And so some of you who have been on for a few months have heard this before from me. I'll probably be repeating uh, this AM Power or this topic every few months, just because I feel like it's very important for us to remember this and keep on the same page. And uh, to start out, let me say that a good environment happens when we are leading with love, when we're focusing on the individual, when we're helping everybody to grow, and we're focusing on the individual dreams and goals of each person and helping to foster that and fuel that so that they can grow as the individual grows, the team grows, and the company grows. And there's been a tendency in the industry, and I'm not here to judge anybody or any time that, and in our lives, we've all been probably guilty of these tendencies in one way or another, whether through parenting or whether through another way. But there's been a tendency in the industry for things to get off balance, and that off balance happens when, and this is just my view of what I've perceived and what I've experienced, is the off balance happens when somebody starts to feel like their business is more important than their downline's business, where their what they need is more important than their downline, and they start to manipulate, they start to control, they start to try to force the downline to do things in order to get the results they want. And they're kind of forgetting that their downline is their business, right? So as their downline can just thrive and get what they want, they're going to get what they want. So there's this imbalance starts to happen, and pride and ego is the main factor of that. So there's a lot to do with pride and ego in our lives, and it's interesting because maybe some of you are thinking about an upline or somebody in the past, most likely an upline in the past, who you're thinking, man, yeah, the way they treated me wasn't good, or this person, the way they did things, it did not help us grow, and it made people frustrated. But it's important for us to remember when we're thinking of them, we do need to consciously realize, wait a minute, how do I do something different? Okay, because there's this pattern that starts to happen, and it's a human nature to repeat patterns. So before I get into that, I'm going to go a little bit more into a story that happened to me when I was in Ecuador. I was in Ecuador for 2 years, and I was on a bus, and I wasn't really the bus system in Ecuador, by the way, is the best system I've ever seen. They have the best transportation I had ever seen up to that point in my life. And you could go anywhere just getting on the bus system from one to the other, etc. Well, we were on a bus, I wasn't paying attention, and I look up, we came to a stop. I look up, and we're on this small street, and somehow our bus got face to face with another bus. And however it happened, they maneuvered in a weird way. They were literally staring at each other, and the bus drivers were just looking at each other like this, just staring each other down because one had to move back and they weren't willing to do it. And the people were yelling at them, "Hey, just move back, just back up, just go around, no problem." But they wouldn't budge. And it felt like an hour. It was probably like 15, 20 minutes to the point where we all just got off the bus and started walking. And I remember when I got off the bus, the words came to my mind: pride impedes progress. It was the most perfect example of how pride impedes progress because they weren't willing to budge. And there's so many aspects of this in our life, of whether we're just too prideful to learn and grow, or whether we're allowing pride to impede us in the way that we work with people. There's so many different ways that happens, and we all have to work with this, right? It's not something that we can just point the finger at one person. We all have levels of pride that we have to work with, and ego that steps in so many different ways in our life. And this one, today I'm just going to focus in on how we can work with this in having great relationships. But that's a factor we all have to deal with every single day, is how we manage that ego. So when I realized this, again, going back to the imbalance with network marketing, the pride can happen in where, oh, well, I'm a triple diamond, and this person that just came in, they're an affiliate, so I have the right to tell the affiliate what to do. right? Where in reality, that's not the case. We know that everybody here we're all volunteers. So everybody that comes in as an affiliate, they all have the same exact rights. They all have the same exact. And now that's not to say that as people grow, they're going to get different benefits as they grow in the business. Of course, triple diamonds and red diamonds and purple diamonds, they're going to get bonuses. They're going to get different things because they've grown to a certain point. That's different than having authority over an individual, right? So as far as authority goes, we all have the same authority. Nobody has authority over another person in this business. And that's kind of what we preach, right? We're telling people, hey, come join us because here you're free. You're your own boss. You don't have a boss. Yet what I've seen in the past was the opposite. People started to get in a boss, and it was in a really bad way. It was a boss that was very manipulative, and they're like probably the worst case scenario. Maybe not the worst, but one of the worst case scenarios I saw was to the point where it was so much pressure on the people that there was a lady that she wanted to be in the hospital with her daughter, and the leader told her, you need to be here at the event. You're doing this business for your daughter. You should be here at the event. Imagine the type of manipulation that like how it got to that point where we know that the truth is she should be with her daughter. She did the business so she can be with her daughter. That's why she did the business, right? So he twisted it. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. How is this happening right now? So but that's what can happen if we don't like check ourselves and get ourselves back in balance. When we see ourselves getting out of balance, we have to realize, hey, wait, this doesn't feel right. I need to get back in balance. I need to focus in on the individual, help fuel their dreams and goals, help them grow. And as we do that, we're going to grow as well. So the other, one second. Okay. So, okay, the other part I wanted to mention was how we have to be careful about this because it's easy for us to point fingers at our upline. It's easier to say, hey, that person has a problem, or this leader that I had in the past, oh, they were so bad. But when something negative happens, like I mentioned before, there's a human tendency, unfortunately, to repeat. And sometimes I've complained about somebody and then I really have to reflect and I realize, wow, I just did the same thing to so and so, or I was doing the same thing here. And so what are we doing to consciously make a shift, to consciously make the change? And I have a story of where one of the times of my life where I had to consciously make a change was in my parenting style. And I'm not here to tell anybody how to parent. I'm not saying that this style is the right style I'm not trying to say what's the right parenting style. For me, I had to change my parenting style because of my tendencies, because of my passion. I grew up where my dad, amazing individual, but back in the day, they had the belt, right? And I didn't get the belt a lot because I'm the youngest of 10 kids. So I saw all my brothers get the belt and I was like, well, I don't want that. So I did my best to behave, but I got it a couple times. And but when I had kids and they would like I felt like they were disrespecting me. They're little kids, right? They're disrespecting me. They're not obeying. So I started spanking. And it wasn't super bad, but it was worse. It was more than I wanted. And I remember one night I had a dream where my son was up against the door, terrified of me. And I was approaching him, and then I woke up. And I was like, I don't want that. That's not who I want to be. I don't want to be that guy. So I literally had to consciously make a shift to change a pattern, which how long have people been speaking? I'm not again not saying what's right or what's wrong, but for me, because of my passion, because I wouldn't do it out of just self-control, it was more out of frustration. That's not okay for me. It's just not. And so I had to make that shift. And but I had to consciously change the pattern. I had to consciously decide how am I going to do this differently? And it's not like it was simple parenting, there's not a guide. So I'm trying to be creative on ways we teach the kids and motivate them to do the right thing instead of forcing them to do the right thing. But that's another story. But it was a great experience for me to realize, okay, I had this pattern drop down for me because if somebody had asked me when I was a kid, are you going to spank your kids? Maybe I would have said no. But I naturally started to follow the pattern that I was given. So the craziest example, probably the most ironic day in my life in network marketing was the day where a guy calls me. He is going off about his upline, just all the bad things this upline was doing, the way he was mistreating, all these things. And it was probably like 5, 10 minutes. Okay, finally get through the phone call. I end the call. I don't think 5 minutes passed. His downline calls me and she starts complaining about him. Almost the exact same things that he was complaining about his upline. And I was like, how does this happen? These are good people, but somehow the culture was so strong, the pattern was so strong that it started getting passed down pretty quickly, and they were doing it maybe without even realizing that they were doing it. And I saw so many things happen where people would complain. I'm like, it's so weird that this person's following that pattern because they know it's not okay, but they're still doing it. So how can we consciously visualize ourselves doing it differently? And I remember, I believe it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. When I was a kid playing sports, I remember that when I made a mistake, I would dwell on that mistake like crazy, and it would because I was so mad about it. And later, I would go play the game, and what would happen? I'd make the same mistake. So when I read, I think it was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he mentioned, what can I, what did I do good, and what would I do differently? Because if we focus on what we did good, our mind's going to be practicing that. But if we focus on what we did differently instead of what we did bad, we're going to find a solution, and now our mind's focusing on the solution. So my invitation is to focus on, if any of you have had, which we all have at some point, an experience with somebody who's had authority or thought they had authority, or somebody above us in an upline or whatever, who wasn't doing things the way we felt were right. How can we consciously think? And I invite you to consciously think, how would I do it differently? How am I going to lead my team differently? How am I going to guide them differently to have a great environment, to have a great situation where they're going to be so grateful to be with me as a leader, right? So that's the invitation I have, is to really think about how we can create that in our organization. And each one of you as leaders, because all of you are leaders, are going to create your own organization within the organization. So we have a global organization, but within that, you each are creating your organization. You're helping to foster that environment and pass down correct patterns within that organization. And so each of us play a very important role in maintaining a healthy environment and in correcting our own mistakes, because we're all gonna make mistakes. And so anybody who's made the mistakes is not here again. It's not about judging. It's not about pointing fingers. It's about how do we recognize it and how do we switch that pattern to a better pattern where we can foster a good environment. And it's important to realize, again, as far as like the idea, I have authority over somebody else. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Everybody signed up as an independent affiliate with Vital Health Global. They didn't sign a contract with an upline. They didn't sign, well, probably not, unless unless somebody did that. But that's not part of the business, right? It is about being your own boss, and realize that everybody has their agency, and we need to support and recognize that agency. And that's, to me, there's a certain unconditional love I feel like we should have when it comes to people wanting to try different things, wanting to experiment on a different way to do the business and be creative, because creativity breeds innovation. And yes, there's a system for a reason. The systems are good. The systems are proven. The systems have amazing components, but systems also have innovation over time as well. And so we can teach that, and we can foster that, and we can show that. And I believe we should, because it obviously works, and there's a really good principles to follow. At the same time, it's important to be creative. If they do it a little bit differently, that's okay, because maybe they're going to find something that we can now implement into the system and make it even better, right? So it's just about having that type of unconditional love for our people and showing that day one. And there's a certain power with leading with love and showing with love. That if we, not just with leadership, but as we focus in on love, even in everything, in prospecting, in presentation, everything changes when our focus is how do we impact people's lives with this business through helping them with their health, helping them with their finances. And I've told the story before where I used to be terrified and still get nervous in front of crowds. Like this, getting on the AM Power is getting easier now because this is my third one. But I was terrified the first time, and because it's a new thing, new group, and I've been presenting for like 17 years. But when I was a kid, it was so bad that when I was in class, I would try to read. It was my turn to read in front of the class. It was just a paragraph, and I got breathing so hard, I had to take a pause to keep breathing and then say the next words to keep breathing. And I finally got through it, and I felt so bad. I was so frustrated about it. And this type of thing happened throughout grade school. And then I remember sitting on the grass one day, just really, really frustrated about how that happened and why that happened, and trying to find a solution. Over time, long story short, I realized one day it was just a click. If I can just focus in on the audience, if I can just focus in on how I can benefit somebody today and how I can give them something that they can take with them, everything changes. I'm not giving a perfect presentation, but me compared to me, it's going to be way 10 times better than me worrying about little things that I might be doing wrong or being afraid of of this or that, right? So the best thing for me is to focus in on how I can make an impact and how I can bless people. And really that's presenting with love. And that little shift made a tremendous difference for me in my presentation and in the way that I'm able to to do my job. Excuse me. So that's really I'm getting on the 20-minute mark. Again, I'm not long-winded, guys. This is what it is, but I really believe that we can maintain this culture. We have such an amazing culture here with Vital Health Global. So anything that I've shared today, it's not because of things I'm seeing within Vital Health Global. It's things I've seen in the past, and I think we've all seen them in the past. And it's just let's keep this environment healthy because that's going to help us have a long-term solid business. It's one of the most important things we can do is to keep that environment healthy, keep the love strong, keep that vibration. When people come in, they feel it. They know there's a difference here. And that's what I felt when I saw Vital Health Global. That's what I felt when I've been with the leaders, when I saw the executives. It was that difference in the attention to the individual, the focus on the individual. Like even these AM powers, most of these AM powers are about personal development. It's about helping people to become better individuals. And I love it. And I feel the unconditional love from the leadership here. And as I said, I'm just super grateful for it. Grateful for all of you. Thank you for everything that you do. We're here to serve you in any way we can and have a wonderful day.